Right. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
And today we're here for the Unity of Springfield Adult Education for World Religions and New Thought Religion class that we do every morning. And my name is John Braucher, and I am going to be presenting today on the book Becoming Supernatural, written by Dr. Joe Dispenza. Joe Dispenza is educated initially as a chiropractor. That's what his doctorate is in. He's currently faculty at Quantum University in Honolulu, Hawaii, the Omega Institute for Holistic Health in Rhinebeck, New York, and the Sri Palu Center for Yoga and Health in Stockbridge, Massachusetts. He partners with other scientists to measure the impact of intentional non-substance induced altered states, or meditation, to study meditation and the different states of consciousness, and to see what impact it has on our functioning and what techniques seem to be effective. And what he does is he does regular workshops, and he tries to bring equipment and technology to measure, to see what he can find out. He does some of the measuring with epigenetic testing, EEGs and brain mapping, individual field energy testing with a gas discharge visualization machine, which I had never really heard of before, but it's in Ghostbusters, and they use it to measure energy fields. So it's a little bit woo-woo. It's not something that all scientists will agree is valid, but it's a way they study, I guess, the motion of electrons in the space. So, he also studied brain-heart coherence with heart math monitors, and the energy present in workshop environments before, during, and after the events with a Sputnik GGB sensor, which is a gas discharge visualization sensor. After his doctorate in chiropractic, he also has had postgraduate studies in neurology, brain function, neuroscience, chemistry, cellular biology, memory formation, and aging and longevity are areas that he's interested in and has continued his studies. So, Dr. Joe, as I'll refer to him, gets a little bit in the weeds because he really likes the science, okay, which I really appreciate. And he's got,
Me too.
In the center of his book, he has lots of graphs and pictures that show evidence and results of testing and stuff that he's done in response to some of the workshops that he does. And so in this presentation, we'll go a little bit into the weeds, and then we'll do some practice stuff, in each of his chapters, or most of his chapters, he'll go through and he'll give a lot of examples. I'm not going to push too much on the motivation, on the stories of like some of the amazing results, because I'm just going to assume that everybody is on board, and I don't have to convince you that these things are possible. But I'll go a little bit into the science behind it, and then we'll do some practical application stuff. To start with, I'd like us to get comfortable, get a little bit settled, and we do a little bit of a practice just to kind of get centered, but also to have a run through to kind of get ready for where we're headed in terms of the practice. So one of the first skills that he teaches, and that I'll go through, and I've taught it before in previous classes, and that's diaphragmatic breathing. So most of us, I think, are aware of that. Diaphragmatic breathing is when you breathe through your belly as opposed to your chest and your shoulders, so that when you inhale, your belly goes out. When you exhale, your belly goes back in. And it's important to breathe this way because it calms the amygdala, massages the vagus nerve, which calms the amygdala and signals the brain that we're safe, and keeps us from pulling the fire alarm, which is the amygdala. It gets us all hyper defensive in a trauma response setting, which makes meditation difficult. And the second thing to practice a little bit, and it'd be helpful if everybody not only practices it a little bit here, but also throughout the week. And there's handouts on this first table here and the last table on the back. Does everybody know what a Kegel is? Okay. A Kegel exercise is simply the muscle that you tense when you stop a stream of urine when you go into the bathroom. When you're urinating, that muscle that you use to stop the stream of urine is the same muscle that you use in a Kegel exercise. So we'll get into this a little bit later when we're talking about chakras, but that's the base abdominal floor muscle, which is involved in blocking the lower chakra so that we can then do some chakra cleansing with some breathing exercises. And the areas of the energy centers or chakras that tend to get blocked are the lower three energy centers. So what we do is we'll block that and then do some prana or breathing exercises to cleanse that so that we become more open to a new energy, which is what this is all about. It's about focusing and getting geared into receiving some new energies to live life more intentionally and less accidentally, or less on autopilot and more intentional. Okay. So just do the breathing and practice being able to clench that pelvic floor muscle and breathe a few cycles of breaths before releasing that. Just so it becomes easier to do. And then just focus on the breath. When you notice the thoughts, don't judge them. Just be the observer. Notice them. Refocus back onto the breath. I have two other disclaimers that I would like to cover with this. The first is that when you get into chakra work and cleansing the chakras and so on and so forth, it's not uncommon that you will have a rush of emotions. So it's good when you get into a practice like this, a deeper practice, that you have some supportive people in your life. And hopefully that so there's some supportive group of people that you're engaging in this practice with. So you have somebody that you feel like you can trust, that you can process intense emotions and feelings with and feel supported as you go through this process. The second is that, again, as I said before, we're going to get a little bit into the weeds and things, and so I found this meme and that I would like to share. It says, if you can't meditate, pause before every sip of coffee. If you can't pray, simply say thank you before every meal. If you can't manifest, enjoy what's already yours. And if you can't journal, talk to yourself in the car. There is no spirituality rule book. Just show up for yourself in ways that feel good to you. Okay. So even though we're going to kind of get into the weeds and talk about taking things to a kind of an intense level, it's not a requirement that we like be there or that we get there. There is no there. We're here. And so that's, and for my spirit group.
I was going to say, wait, this is Thursday night.
For our spirit group friends, I want to say that it's okay to be irreverent. That's the word.
Irreverent.
Irreverent.
Found it.
Okay. So, back to a little bit of the philosophy and the background from behind where Joe Dispenza's coming from, Dr. Joe's coming from. During a very transcendental meditative experience that he had, while focusing on his pineal gland, he had the following epiphany. He says, quote, I received very clear information. I suddenly knew that linear time, as I believed it to be, with a definite past, present, and future, was not the way the world really works. Instead, I understood that everything is actually happening in an eternal present moment. In this infinite amount of time, there exist infinite spaces, dimensions, or possible realities to experience. Like looking into two mirrors opposite one another and seeing infinite spaces or dimensions, except it's not just in those two mirrors, it's above you, below you, in front of you, behind you, to your left, to your right, on angles, infinite, going on and on and on. And that's
mind-boggling.
quantum field.
Fractal math. Fractal.
And
F-R-A-C-T-A.
each one of those limitless possibilities already exist. He says, goes on and says, I knew that by putting my attention on any one of these possibilities, I would actually experience that reality. I also realized that I wasn't separate from anything. I sensed oneness with everything, everyone, every place, and every time. I can only describe it as if it was the most familiar, unfamiliar feeling I have ever had in my life. So, close quote. So Dr. Joe believes that the pineal gland serves as a dimensional timepiece, or I use the word portal, that when activated, we can dial into any space-time continuum. Okay. Cause it's like a cosmic antenna into the field. Now the field itself is ineffable, which is another word I really like, that Sue uses, which basically just means words can't even begin to describe what we're talking about. And I think when he had this experience, it was one of those ineffable experiences that words don't really do it justice. Has anybody ever seen the movie Interstellar?
Oh, God, yes.
So, in Interstellar, Matthew McConaughey is the lead in this movie, and the world has become a dust bowl. The Earth has become a dust bowl, and he gets sent out into space to try and find another world outside of our solar system. So they send him to a black hole to travel in quantum traveling. And anyways, it goes on, and he ends up going into a quantum
Tesseract.
hole, thinking that he's going to his death. But he ends up finding a fifth dimension that had some three-dimensional characteristics, and basically it showed this thing of the mirrors of his daughter's bedroom / library in the house that he raised his children in, which is how he ended up being able to communicate
That's great.
across time to his family in this movie. But anyways, it was just it just came to my mind when I was reading this, because it actually has a visual representation of what he's describing. Yes.
What came to my mind was years ago, and I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember these, but if you went to, I guess it was the circus, and they had these fun houses where you could go in and you could stand in front of a mirror and it'd make you look taller, shorter, fatter, thinner. But they also had them where they went boom, 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 boom out in all directions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what came to my mind.
Right. Yes. Very cool. So the next concept that I'll present from that he is in this book. Also, Lisa mentioned going ahead and keeping that mic on, and going ahead and placing it in the.
Yeah, you can hear when you do that.
Yes.
You can hear just fine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yep.
We don't have to hold them.
And also, it's maybe easier for them to hear online too.
That's what I'm talking about.
You said leave it on.
I'm talking about online.
Yeah, leaving it on so that they can hear better online.
Test. Yep.
Even like my voice going out, and then it picks up on that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Okay. So, most of us are familiar with present moment awareness, yes?
I started working with chakra cleansing in 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And it's easier if you teach yourself the colors. And I had a diagram of each chakra.
Right.
And it's so much easier when you go into meditation to think of these cleansing with colors.
Right. And if you go online and Google chakra cleansing, you'll get some guided meditations using the color.
There's also a ton on YouTube too.
Yes.
A ton. Because I didn't really understand them.
Yeah.
And
Well,
went
and
there.
Google takes you.
Yeah.
Then we follow the Roy G. Biv, the frequencies of colors, all the way up to indigo, violet, up at the top, right?
Correct.
Red, yeah.
So, anyways, the present moment and digging deeper. We're familiar with present moment awareness as something as part of doing meditation. And when he talks about present moment, he takes it to another level. We often think of just present moment in our 3D reality, so it's just the here and now. And he's saying that what we really want to do is be so quiet and so current moment that we become really aware of our automatic thinking. And right now many of us are going through the Untethered Soul reading with Sue and the spirit groups, and of course it talks about the manic mind and the automatic thinking and stuff, which basically is the programmed subconscious that we experience reality with. The habit thinking, which leads to our habit behaviors, that is something that is always going on and impacts how we feel, what we think, what we're doing, and we want to, part of this whole process is to become much more intentional about where we're going. So if you don't get beyond who you think you are and the way you've been conditioned to believe the way the world works, it's not possible to create a new life or destiny. Okay, and he goes on to talk about how the brain works. So as you drive your car, or any other task that requires senses, motor skills, and executive function, you're turning on a specific sequence, pattern, and combination of neurological networks. And the neurons that fire together accomplish the task become more wired together. So the more we use certain things and do certain things, we experience neurogenesis and the growth of neurons and neural pathways that become stronger. So the more you drive, the more you practice an app to learn Spanish, the more you study coding, if you're working on computer coding, the more you study anything, the more you get in, the more you practice meditation, the more you're wiring your brain, rewiring your brain when you're doing something new. But when you're doing something that you already know, you're just going back into the past and going off of past feelings and going on to autopilot. And so just knowing the difference between whether you're on autopilot in this comfort level of just life as usual versus intentional taking, stepping out of that comfort zone and intentionally rewiring your neurology the way you want it to be. Okay? So that ends up changing how we think, how we feel, and then ultimately our behaviors come in line with that. And everybody who's ever done a true lifestyle change, like where you decide that eating well or good physical activity is going to become a part of your life, it's to make that a habit takes a lot of intentionality. It doesn't just happen accidentally. It's something you have to really focus on, and it gets outside of our comfort level. There's times where you're going, I don't really, and you have to really use some self-discipline, and we have to push ourselves to move in a certain direction to change. But when we do this, when we're doing this, when we're driving, it leaves a biological impression in our brain. And these experiences not only enhance the brain circuitry, so if you're learning to drive or a foreign language or whatever it is, you're enhancing that, but you're also creating emotion. And emotion is our guidance system. Okay? And it's like neither good nor bad, it's just an imprint left behind when we're engaging in this circuitry, this neural circuitry. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that you acquire through frequent repetition. Has anybody ever heard of the book, The Power of Habit?
Heard of it?
Yeah.
Okay. It's and everything gets stored in the hippocampus part of the brain when you have a habit, so that you don't, like a person can, once you have a habit and it goes from the hippocampus, it gets stored then into the basal ganglia. Like, you know how to ride a bike. Have you ever learned how to ride a bike? Everybody in this room? Okay. Have you ever had to relearn how to ride your bike?
It's an expensive one.
But it comes pretty quick. Okay. The actual knowing how to ride the bike. Now, you may have some balance issues that come with age, but you know how to ride the bike. That you didn't forget how to ride your bike. And that's because it's stored in the basal ganglia. People have had, the hippocampus stores middle and long-term memory. People have had their hippocampus destroyed either through injury or illness, and they could still walk to the bathroom because their body knows where the bathroom is. Now, if you move them to a different home, they're SOL.
They're peeing in the corner.
But if you leave them in the environment where they learned all these habits, they're still good as gold for doing stuff. They couldn't tell you where the bathroom is, but their body still knows where it is. Anyways, it's an amazing book. So anyways, now the reason why I'm mentioning the habit is 99% of our behavior is habitual. And that includes our cognitive behavior or our thoughts. It's repetition. Repetitive. Unless we intentionally stop and intentionally choose something different and get out of the comfort zone of the ongoing. Now, I'm not saying that all of the habits are comfortable, because a lot of our habits are not very comfortable. They actually lead us into discomfort often, and illness and such. But there is some comfort in that we recognize it and it's not new. And sometimes going into the new, into the darkness, into the unpredictable, and we don't know what's coming is scary, because we don't know. When you're dealing with quantum or unlimited possibilities, we're talking about, we don't really know. Sometimes we have to trust the process. And that reminds me of another meme I saw the other day. And it was, trust the process, and this guy is walking across a creek and falls into this really deep hole. He goes underwater and comes up sputtering and then gets out. And sometimes, when we trust the process, it doesn't always go smoothly. You just don't know.
Well, because we're not really trusting it. We're trying to trust it.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so another premise that we talked about is, that he talks about and that we've talked about before, is where you place your attention is where you place your energy. Yes?
One of the issues I find is that when I try to imagine the infinite with a finite mind, and I'm always struggling with the finite in order to accept the infinite, because I always want to put a boundary. I want something I can grab a hold of. And at the same time, he is saying, I am here, grab a hold of me. And so I have to, in darkness, walk through all that I see in order to become part of him.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, sometimes I'll just crawl up on my roof and look at the sky at night to try and get past that. It's a finite, things go, oh.
It's just, you become awe-inspired.
It's too wild. So the moment you place your attention on a familiar emotion, your energy is in the past. Okay. So he goes on to talk about priming your mind and body for a new future. At Harvard, 2 groups practiced piano, one on pianos. Another group just practiced imagining playing piano. And they both grew a dramatic number of new neural circuits, similar in size and effect. Even though One group was actually playing piano. Another group was just imagining playing piano. But the impact that was going on in the brain, in the neural circuitry, was very, very similar. In the Cleveland Clinic, another study had two groups of people, and one group flexed their biceps repeatedly. And they did this over a 12-week study. Another group just imagined flexing their biceps. And the group that just imagined increased their bicep strength 13.5% in 12 weeks. Just through imagining. Because of the neural circuitry that's involved in the neuromuscular chain. Because it created chemicals and so on and so forth. What we were thinking and imagining was moving into the physical three-dimensional. Okay. So again, that's just some of the stuff that's going behind the scenes. Epigenetics is another area that he studied, and that a little bit, just to give a little understanding, in the studies that I thought were important to share is that when doing meditation, one of the things that they know is that it increases immunoglobulin and decreases cortisol. And one of the things we know about immunoglobulin, which it helps stabilize our immune system. And one of the things we know about it is that both of these substances, immunoglobulin on one end and cortisol kind of on the opposite end, impact genes that have to do with chronic illness. And they have the ability to either turn on or turn off protective and vulnerable genes that have to do with chronic illness, chronic pain, arthritis, heart disease, and other chronic diseases, so that if you're increasing the amount of immunoglobulin in your system, you're actually already taking part in a healing experience. Because you're exposing these genes to a substance that allows a protective gene to turn on.
And how do you do that?
Meditation, and we'll get a little bit more into the weeds here about and then we'll do the practice. Okay, so you do it by changing brainwaves. Okay. So on the handout that I have given you, the first one just talks about placing your attention in your inner thoughts. As the you is in the middle, and then these are all just different things that are happening in our outside world. But whenever we focus on them, they're materializing, and we're giving energy to those relationships or those aspects of our life. The backside has the top part is brain waves, and the second part is energy centers or chakras. So in the brainwave part, we know that if we're in alpha or deeper waves, that the immunoglobulin is being produced, and we're experiencing less of the cortisol. Okay. Cortisol occurs in the high beta. So beta includes where we are right now, which is the normal awake, relatively calm, but we're thinking, analyzing, thinking about stuff, and we're awake, fully awake, drinking coffee. So we're in the low beta. If we're kind of on edge, a little nervy about being in a group of people, or getting up and presenting, might be medium beta. If I was on survival mode, and if any of us are in survival mode or experiencing intense emotions or something triggers us, then that's high beta. And that's where the cortisol comes in, which we know turns on vulnerable genes to chronic disease and chronic illness. So when we do body scan in church, for the church meditation, that's to get us to alpha. It's a very relaxed, calm, sometimes even intuitive. It involves daydreaming, imagining. And a good way to get there is to do the body scan technique that we do every Sunday in church. Doing the diaphragmatic breathing also is an effective way to get to alpha. It takes a little more time and practice to get to theta. Theta is the twilight state when the body is falling asleep. So if you're measuring your heart and your breathing, or if somebody's observing you, they think, well, I think John just fell asleep. And my body's asleep, but I'm still aware. That's theta. Okay. So I'm actually still consciously awake, but my body, for all intents and purposes, is checked out. Delta, which usually occurs in deep sleep, is possible with very profound levels of meditation. Okay. And he's done, in some of his workshops, he's had a few people who have been able to achieve that, and they've done some of the measurements on that. That's how they are aware that that actually is achievable. Not everybody can do it, and everybody can't just do it on a dime, but it is something that is possible. And then gamma, which indicates a superconscious state when the brain is aroused by an internal event, much like REM sleep and breathing and dreaming rather, and is also the state that he's trying to help us reach to do this work, to get to that level where we're really operating in the quantum field. So that those are the levels of brain waves. Now, transitioning out of beta is a requirement on a regular basis in order to rewire our neural functions and to begin to have intentional control over the autopilot, our habit thoughts, and default mode. So if we want to reprogram our habit thoughts, it's crucial that we practice transitioning out of beta, at least into alpha, so that we can then become more aware of the underlying thought process and go, well, that's a habit thought. I notice it, and I'm choosing not to ascribe to it, not hold on to it. I'm not going to fight it, because that would just make me focus on it. And then it would become more strong. but I'm going to move to something different that I'm choosing to focus on, to program what I want to program in my consciousness. So being able to reprogram means repetitively. It takes repetition. Okay. And again, the sweet spot of this generous present moment, where there's no familiar past and no predictable future. So it's where we can then write new thoughts, new ideas, new ways of thinking into our hard drive of our brain. So now into the more practical. The first thing that he has people doing, besides just practicing meditation so that you're getting into, transitioning into the alpha states, is to think about having clear intention. So, are there thoughts that you want, that you desire to have a better relationships, better job, better business, resolving a problem, reaching a mystical experience, improved health, a genius mind, abundance, new opportunity? And by clear intention, he means, to go ahead and have some specifics attached to it so that you can kind of visualize what it is that you're talking about, whatever it is, without the how you're going to get there. But what does the end result look like that you're looking for? And second of all, what's the feeling that goes along with it? So the first part is to first identify what it is that you would like to see occur and write that down. And you want it written down so that you can refer to it frequently, because this is what, if we're going to reprogram our own mind, then we need to frequently read it or repeat it or memorize it, talk about it while you're just driving down the road. So frequently throughout the day, but particularly first thing in the morning and before you go to sleep at night, kind of review it. And then also make it so it becomes part of that automatic thinking. That's what, when you're just kind of on autopilot, that's what comes to our mind, is whatever it is that we're wanting to see become a part of our reality. Because if it's right there in the subconscious, in our subconscious, and it's there not because we grew up that way, it's because we planted it in our own mind through repetition. It's not magic, it's work. It's our work.
Emotion as well as thought, right?
Correct. So the one is the thought, the second is, he calls it elevated emotions. So empowered, feeling in love with life, feeling free, feeling grateful, feeling connected, feeling awestruck, feeling joyful, feeling worthy, feeling unlimited. And are examples. And you can use whatever words, but that's kind of the the feelings that you're starting to get into. Yes,
Abraham Hicks teaches in an emotional guidance system.
correct.
That's what we've been given, and there's stuff like fear and anger and victimhood down at the bottom, and they suggest moving yourself up one step at a time, because once you get to hope on the emotional guidance scale, and all that other joy and yay stuff is on top of hope, but once you get to hope, the law of attraction will actually start pulling you up. It'll help you move up. When you're down here, the law of attraction keeps you moving down.
So, and that's the purpose for the clearing of the chakras, because the lower chakras, the lower three, is where often.
All that old junk is stored.
Correct. Those are the three energy, and that's why that needs to be cleared. The base chakra is where sexual trauma and other kinds of addictive drives and so on and so forth are stored. The next one is just below the belly button, is where guilt, shame, pain, unworthiness, lack, victimization. And then the one just above the belly button is competition, control, impatience, ego, self-aggrandizement.
And so where would you say hope is by the time you get to the heart chakra?
So, yes, that's, hope is, once you get into the heart chakra, which is the fourth or fifth, and then you're, that's why you clear out the lower ones so that, and then we'll get into next week, so we'll focus more on heart math and some of the imagining and getting a little more into that. So the elevated emotions and imagining both the clear intention matched up with the elevated emotions, and imagining those elevated emotions while also thinking. So you're pairing or anchoring the thought with the feeling, because that's how that leaves a biochemical imprint in our brain, so that that's how you can reprogram. That's how the reprogramming occurs. If you just have the thought, but you don't have the elevated emotion paired with it, it's harder for the learning process to occur. And when you have it paired, then it's easier to store that and get it there and get it more accessible and more repeatable for yourself. And particularly repeatable when you're just kind of not thinking about anything. So when you meditate, instead of listening to this, you start listening to what you've programmed. So that's kind of cool. Okay? All right. So, and the last thing before we finish up is the on the energy centers, because we already kind of talked about that. That the contracting of the intrinsic muscles, which is the Kegel and the lower abdominal, so about up to around the belly button. So you do the Kegel, tighten, and then pull in, tighten in your belly button towards your spine. And those of you who've been in yoga class, you know what I'm talking about. In fact,
I'm sorry, what does that do for you?
what that does, according to Joe, Dr. Joe, and I'd not heard this before I read that, but according to him, it moves cerebral spinal fluid up towards the brain.
Ah.
And it increases the energy creating an electromagnetic field. It increases your aura, essentially, from what he's describing. And they've measured it, I guess, with some of this highfalutin equipment that he brings to his workshops. And that also enhances this whole process of achieving deeper levels in meditation, but also that access, because as you move up the chakras, the field is actually, and when we do meta meditations, where we're doing the self-love and then loving the community, loving the church, loving the community and the country and so on and so forth, we're going out and out and out. That's a way of kind of reaching the field, the quantum field. That's the going beyond ourselves. And the way to get there is up through the chakras and coming outside of the crown is actually just above the actual physical head, crown of the head, where the portal is to the field. So it's energizing. It's bringing that energy to open up the ability to move outward and expand beyond the physical body that we see as being, which is not really this. Already there's electrons bouncing everywhere around the room, but according to Dr. Joe, in order for us to accentuate this response, we want to clear out the chakras and energize from that portal place, because that's the most efficient way of moving out and around.
Can I say something?
Yes.
One of the hope is a feeling of lack. It's in the knowing that it will be.
Well, it's on the continuum.
It just is.
Well,
Because the power that is will be, and it shall be that way.
yes. And we're not always in the knowing space.
Oh no, we're a very limited creature.
So the reason why I mentioned continuum is because if you're at hope, then
It's
you're not where you're not at a place where you're experiencing manifestation, but you're not so far away that you can't get there.
Victimhood.
Well, it's at the same time, hope is just a feeling of lack, because you don't lack anything. Everything is yours. It always will be.
That's true, and it's also on the road.
Yeah. So it's victimhood.
Yes,
Okay.
from hope you could go down to hopelessness,
and you can.
but you can also go from certitude
and
to hopelessness.
Servitude is what we are here for, is to serve one another. That's to the best of our abilities.
Yes. And being in the three-dimensional living as we do in our experience, we're going to experience levels of, what does Abraham call it?
Vortex.
No.
Consciousness,
No, the,
Emotional.
emotional
not
guidance,
conflict, but
Contrast.
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 And when you're in the contrast,
Swimming upstream.
you're not all, you're in flux about where it is that you're going. You're in a learning process. You don't know
Yeah.
how it's going to end up. Now, if you have faith, then you feel comfortable. You feel that it's going to turn out okay. But you don't know how it's going to look. You don't know the specifics. You don't know the how it's going to come out and why it's going to come out. And we've run past. So again, like I said, next time we will go on to the heart math and some of the other levels of some of the other meditations and stuff that are in the higher chakras and activating those. So, and then and any other comments?
Faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love.
All right.
What's the title of that book, John?
It is Becoming Supernatural.
Yeah.
And the foreword was done by Greg Braden. And Jody Spencer is the author.
Yeah, I know.
Becoming supernatural. That's funny.
He's got another really good one called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself.
I have that one downloaded. I think we were just talking about that one. Yeah.
You got the announcements, John?
Oh, sure.
I love your socks, Greg. So fun.
Okay.
Breaking the habit of identical socks.
Boring. Not to have.
The compassionate care team will be meeting right after service today. Some of the things this team does is make phone calls, visit homebound congregants, visit congregants in the hospital, prepare food for ill congregants, send greeting cards for a variety of occasions, and much more. If you're interested in helping with this, please stay for the meeting. There is also a sign-up sheet still out there in the foyer. The mid-month renewal meditation is this Thursday at 6:30 p.m. It's a great opportunity to come together in fellowship and meditation. Cat's Veterans Breakfast, October 21st, 10 a.m., Fellowship Hall. Next Sunday, I'll be doing part 2 of this. Becoming Supernatural. October 20th, this coming Friday, is our annual spaghetti sauce cook-off and variety show. John Russ is going to fill us in on some details during service or after service. New member orientation will be next Sunday, October 22nd, right after service, and the new member ceremony will be October 29th during the celebration service. Our bylaws state that to become a member, you must have attended Unity of Springfield for 6 months and attend orientation on the 22nd. If you'd like to become a member, please pick up an application at the welcome desk. The next diversity game night is October 27th at 6 p.m. Feel free to dress up and join us for Halloween tricks and treats. Spook Trunkular is coming up October 28th, 5 p.m. We need more trunks and candy. And today begins week 7 of our 8 items in 8 weeks challenge for the shelter. It's not too late to get involved. Just bring all 8 items. And this week's item is paper towels. And that's it. And we'll meet in the back. And we're